This memorial is dedicated to all men and women of Washington County, Virginia, who have served in the military forces of the United States. The seals displayed here are symbolic of the many organizations nationwide that honor and protect and preserve the history of all veterans, regardless of what branch of military. This is an aviation. This is the Purple Heart. POWMIA, you are not forgotten plaque. And when you step up, first word, Semper Paratus, in the Coast Guard plaque. The Navy plaque, not self, but country. This we will defend. Semper Fidelis, Semper Fi, in other words, aim high, fly, fight, win. And that is Air Force motto. Marines, Army. This is to honor the people in Vietnam, in the Washington County, Virginia, who gave their lives for the cause of freedom in Vietnam. May they never be forgotten. This is called the Liberty Peace Tree. The first Liberty tree was an American elm tree that stood on the Boston Commons in Boston, Massachusetts. Prior to the American Revolution, on August 1765, a group of men, calling themselves the Sons of Liberty, gathered in Boston under the elm tree to protest the hated Stamp Act that the British had imposed on the colonies. From that day forward, the tree became known as the Liberty Tree, and for a decade it was a rallying point for protest against the British rule. The famous Boston Tea Party, December 1773-6, resulted from a rally under the elm. The news of the Liberty Tree spread throughout the colonies. Thereafter, many communities had their own Liberty Tree where citizens would gather to express their grievances against the British, while giving an appearance of a group just chatting beneath a shade tree. British troops in Boston, in spite retaliation to patriot protests, cut the elm to the ground. The concept of the Liberty Tree, however, lived on in hundreds of towns throughout the colonies. In every colony, patriots consecrated their own Liberty Tree and flew its likeness on their flags. In 1775, Thomas Paine expressed this new symbol of freedom in verse. From the east to the west, blow the trumpet to arms. Through the land, let the sound of it flee. Let the far and the near all unite with a cheer in defense of our Liberty Tree. The dove of peace that is flying over the tree was modeled from the dove of peace carrying an olive branch that George Washington designed and had placed on the weather vane of the cupola at Mount Vernon. This centuries-old symbol of peace held special meaning for the man who had been the great leader in our fight of independence. Peace with all the world is my sincere wish, said George Washington in 1798. This is a Liberty Tree right here, and it was planted for a military person, because you can see the yellow ribbon around it. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in the air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. The star-spangled banner The national anthem of the United States was written by Francis Scott Key during the War of 1812 and set to the music to Anna Saran in Heaven, an Old English tune. In the summer of 1813, Major George Armistead, commander of Fort McHenry, which guarded the Baltimore harbor, commissioned Baltimore resident Mary Young Pickersgill, a maker of colors, to make an American flag so large that the British, who had been waging war with the United States since 1812, would have no trouble seeing it from a great distance. By August, Mrs. Pickersgill and her 13-year-old daughter Caroline had finished the flag. It measured 30 by 42 feet. Armistead then proudly had his great flag of the United States of America raised above Fort Henry, British and all to see. The poem was quickly distributed on handbills throughout the city of Baltimore. Later, the poem was published in Baltimore newspapers and met with an instant popularity and was soon renamed the Star-Spangled Banner in 1931. It was officially adopted by the United States as our national anthem. And please stand up whenever we have the Star-Spangled Banner. World War I, dedicated to the men and the women who answered the call of duty in the way of right and liberty during World War I. And yes, women was the backbone of all the wars that we have been in. Because without them, who would have been left to take care of everybody? The history of Veterans Day. Veterans Day is an official United States holiday honoring the men and women who have served in the military service. It is observed each year on November 11th. Veterans Day coincides with Armistice Day and Remembrance Day, which are also celebrated in other countries on November 11th. In these other countries, this date is set aside for honoring those who died in military service. The historical significance of November 11th stems from the fact that in 1918, major hostilities of World War I were formally ended at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when the armistice with Germany went into effect. Veterans Day in the United States is intended to thank all military veterans for dedicated and loyal service to our country. Memorial Day, on the other hand, is a day of remembering the men and women who died while serving in our military services and observed each year on the last Monday of May. In 1945, World War II veteran Raymond Weeks from Birmingham, Alabama, had the idea to expand Armistice Day to honor all veterans, not just those who died in World War I, and began a campaign to accomplish this goal, in great part due to his efforts. Congress on June 1954 amended the 1938 Act by replacing the word armistice with veterans. Veterans Day is a celebration to honor Americans, veterans, for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. November 11th of each year is a day that we express to veterans our appreciation for the sacrifices they have made to keep our country free. We should, however, give thanks every day to veterans and our military servicemen and women who gave and continue to give their lives for the cause of freedom. For without their service and sacrifice, there would be no United States of America. World War II, 1941 and 1945, dedicated to the men and women who served our country in the cause of freedom during World War II. And there you go again. Women served in the country, helping back home with all kinds of things that was going on. Korean War, 1950 to 1953, dedicated to the men and women who served our country and the cause of freedom during the Korean War. Vietnam War, 1964 to 1975, dedicated to the men and women who served our country and the cause of freedom during the Vietnam War. Women in military service for America. Since 1776, more than 2.5 million women have served in our military services in the defense of our nation, beginning with the American Revolutionary War and continuing through the present day in all military conflicts, including the War of 1812, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, Persian Gulf War, and continuing the global war on terror. American women have courageously and unselfishly served our country. Among these millions of unsung heroes are Deborah Sampson, Jemima Warner, Sybil Ludington, Mary Hayes, Sacagawea, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, Clara Barton, Harriet Tubman, and a couple other women. And let's see what Harriet Tubman did. Before the Civil War, Harriet Tubman, an escaped slave, helped others escape by way of the Underground Railroad, a part of which runs through neighboring Scott County, Virginia. During the Civil War, she served the Union Army as a nurse and scout and spy, and was well known for her kindness and courage. And if y'all don't know, some of the Confederate Daughters of America had put up Union soldiers, not graves, but monuments across of America. If you go look those up, you can find those. And let's see, Clara Barton. Clara became famous for her work as a nurse on numerous Civil War battlefields, providing aid to both sides. Later, she nursed American soldiers during the Spanish-American War. In 1881, she founded the American Red Cross, which since its conception has worked with the military to provide aid to soldiers throughout the world. Sacagawea, a young teenage Shoshone Native American woman who had been kidnapped by another tribe and purchased by a French trapper to be his wife, was part of the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1804. She served both as an interpreter and a guide for the expedition. She had a baby boy along the way, yet still continued with her duties. Sacagawea was instrumental in the success of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. Dr. Walker served the Union Army during the Civil War. Even though Mary was a physician, because she was a woman, she was at first only allowed to serve the Army as a nurse. It was only later in the war that she was allowed to serve the troops as a physician. Dr. Walker moved frequently between Union and Confederate lines, treating sick and wounded soldiers as well as civilians on both sides. She was captured and held as a POW for several months in a military prison in Richmond, Virginia. Dr. Walker was the first and only woman to receive the nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor. And that's just some of the women that have helped us along the way. And thank you to them, because today we wouldn't have our certain rights that we have. Servicemen and women have marched away to distant places, leaving friends, family, and their own hopes and dreams in order that others may be free. Over the years, we have used different expressions to show and symbolize our gratitude to those who are away, to let them know that they are not forgotten and that their return is anxiously awaited. This is a little hiking that we do. POW flag, American flag, and the Virginia flag. Until You're Home Again. Until You're Home Again monument. This bronze yellow ribbon monument, entitled Until You're Home Again, is first of its kind in the nation and is a permanent symbol of remembrance and support for our military service men and women who are far away from their families and friends and home. The monument was dedicated on Veterans Day, November 11th in 2005. The granite on which this ribbon is mounted is from Culpeper, Virginia, and is known as Virginia Mist. The price of freedom is constant vigilance. No long as we must fight to preserve our freedom, There will always have to be American military servicemen and women away from home, maintaining this vigil. This monument is a permanent symbol to ensure that all our military servicemen and women know that they are appreciated, supported, and remembered. This ribbon and monument will always be here for them all until they're home again.